Welcome to this micro episode of a Star Wars show. I'm your host, Jon Justice. As always, you can email me, TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. It's a micro episode because we're waiting for potential news coming out of San Diego Comic-Con this week. And at the moment, there's very little new to report from that galaxy far, far away. Now, already ahead of this weekend's annual event, there's been a photograph from Ahsoka Season 2 released of Ezra, and the actor who plays the live-action version of Ezra no longer has the beard, looking almost like a one-to-one from the cartoon version of Ezra in Rebels to the live-action version in Ahsoka. So just continued spectacular casting for Ahsoka. I mean, we already know the main characters, but I was already very much in approval of the actors chosen to play the characters that I came to know so well in the Rebels series. Honestly, the one I won't say miscast, because I have no problem with Rosario Dawson playing Ahsoka, but if there were any character that a part of me wishes was played by a different actress, it would have been Ahsoka. I buy into Rosario Dawson being an elder Ahsoka, and Adriana Greenblatt, who played the young Ahsoka, I also thought was a great version of the Rosario Dawson version of Ahsoka in young form. I just much prefer the characterization that was in the Clone Wars and in Rebels to the live-action version that Rosario Dawson portrays. Again, I don't have any problems with the casting. If I were just going to change one character, it would have been that particular character. As I mentioned on the show, I thought that the casting of Sabine was spot on. Really liked the casting of Hera as well, and of course Ezra that I just mentioned. Now, the other news to come out of already San Diego Comic-Con was some more artwork attached to the new animated Darth Maul Shadow Warrior series, one in which I will watch when it comes out, but much like The Mandalorian and Grogu, I'm not clamoring for it the way that I typically would have upcoming newly to be released Star Wars content in the past. And I hope that this pays off for Lucasfilm, but ultimately for Star Wars in general. There was an article that I was just reading right before I started the show talking about one of the latest video games to come out, and the fact that it just didn't do well by all intents and purposes in terms of video game success. You could easily argue that it was a bit of a failure. And the creators of the game went so far as to say that they blamed the waning interest in Star Wars at the moment. The fact that at the moment, Star Wars is not in a very good spot. Now, we know that Lucasfilm, at Disney's urging, has backed off of releasing content. And we do have content that's in the works, obviously. But there was, much to my dismay, what I thought wouldn't happen, and that was a bit of oversaturation of Star Wars content. And unfortunately, not top quality content with that oversaturation. So we're in this lull phase. And I hope that this lull phase brings about a new level of excitement when we begin to see these new projects start to be promoted. Specifically, I'm talking about those live-action series, or those live-action films that we are looking for. The Mandalorian and Grogu next year, and of course Star Wars Starfighter, and then whatever ends up happening after that. But right now, it's a bummer for me as a massive lifelong Star Wars fan. I'm getting excited in other projects the way that I used to get excited about Star Wars. I've mentioned on the past several episodes, Project Hail Mary, the book that I absolutely adored. I just thought it was spectacular. The Martian is one of my favorite films outside of the Star Wars universe and Star Wars filmography, and I actually like Project Hail Mary by the same author more than I liked The Martian. I don't know how many times I've watched the trailer already, but I am really psyched for this film in a way that I typically get excited for Star Wars projects. And I'm more excited next year for Project Hail Mary coming out in March than I am The Mandalorian and Grogu. I hope that when the promotion for The Mandalorian and Grogu occurs, that I will get as excited as I typically do for a Star Wars project, but at the same time, right now, my interest has been elsewhere. And typically when we have these gaps in Star Wars projects, Star Wars has proved to be resilient, and the fandom comes back, gets excited all over again. I hope that's the case. I went to Target today, had to get some prescriptions, and as I always do, I wandered over into the toy section. And I found it rather comical because they had some Andor Season 2 Black Series characters. And there's a focus on the action figures, both the 3 3/4 vintage series, highly articulated, and then the Black Series 6-inch figures. And I usually sort of lean into the 3 3/4-inch action figures, just like I did when I was younger. I do have my fair share of Black Series 6-inch figures, don't misunderstand. So while we had, timing-wise, some Andor Season 2 figures available, I just now, for the first time, saw the Moff Gideon white troopers that appeared in the finale of Andor Season 3. I recently did not Andor Season 3, The Mandalorian Season 3. And I recently just completed a rewatch of The Mandalorian and really liked that final episode. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And I love those Gideon stormtroopers. I think they're awesome. Why are we just now seeing them on the shelves? Now, I didn't purchase it because the price point was too high, but to be honest, if those had been released at the time of when the series was out, when I was at my sort of, apex mountain of excitement relating to The Mandalorian, I probably would have picked it up. This is an ongoing problem relating to the toys and just how far removed they are from the content of which they're promoting. And it's just part of the new way that, we end up consuming our Star Wars content, and more specifically, how that content is created, that I don't think benefits the fandom or the hype around any of their content that they've been putting out. And I hate to be so negative over something that I love so much, but I want to see Star Wars thrive, and it's a constant theme on the show. I talk about it a lot. And I hope that this lull right now that we're experiencing will bring about a new sense of excitement when it comes to Star Wars. But I'd be lying to say if I wasn't concerned, because the fandom, regardless of the IP, is so focused right now on negativity and things failing, and it's a bummer. It's an absolute bummer. So I am excited for other sci-fi content, and I hope that once we get the official trailers for The Mandalorian and Grogu, I'll get as equally as excited for that. So with that, let's go to the listener feedback that we have this week here on A Star Wars Show. As always, you can email me, TalkShowNerd@gmail.com, or if you're enjoying the show up on YouTube, go ahead and leave a comment there.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
Friend of the show, Disney Desi, writes this. I know it's controversial, but The Last Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie. Not only am I a Reylo, but I loved that Rey was a nobody. It had the same vibe as I Am Your Father, The Empire Strikes Back, making her a Palpatine. In The Rise of Skywalker, felt like if Luke found out Vader was lying and not actually his father in Return of the Jedi, it made what was such a powerful moment so much less impactful. Everyone was expecting her to be related to someone. And then when it turned out that she was a nobody, that was a really shocking and emotional moment, but still made complete sense. I was disappointed that she was a Palpatine and disappointed all the blood the Skywalkers died, leaving only a blood Palpatine in the end. If Ben had lived, even if Rey was a Palpatine, I would have enjoyed The Rise of Skywalker much more. And, I know that your sentiment is echoed by a lot of different individuals, and it's all subjective, as we talked about. I have a different view on it. I was a bit indifferent to Rey being a Palpatine in The Rise of Skywalker. I mean, just straightforward, I didn't really care either way. I was never I was never engaged or compelled to really hold on to any sort of opinion relating to what Rey's background was. I'd be curious to go back and listen to prior podcasts where I speculated on this, and I wonder if my past opinion is echoed in the comments that I'm making now. Be that as it may, at the moment, from what I recall, while I speculated a ton on the show, it didn't really matter to me either way. That being said, I really like the fact that Rey is a Palpatine now. And I like that, in the end, what J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio were going for, I know it doesn't work for everybody. I get that. But what they were going for was this endpoint for the entire series, while also capping off the trilogy, while also making its own film. And J.J. in the documentary for the Skywalker saga, says that it's a story about Skywalkers and Palpatines, and he's right. I mean, Palpatine is introduced from the beginning, even before we get to Anakin Skywalker. And so, in what they were attempting to accomplish, I completely agree with the decision to make Rey a Palpatine. The story beats in terms of the potential poetry aspects that have been memed to death regarding George Lucas and his comments. It's like poetry, it rhymes. It makes all the sense in the world to me, and not only does it make sense, I appreciate it now after all these years, much more so than I did when I first saw the film. My joy of The Rise of Skywalker has actually increased as I've grown to appreciate even more the decisions that the writers, JJ and Chris Terrio, were making for The Rise of Skywalker. Listen, the task that they were given was an incredibly difficult one. I've said this many times on the show. I don't know that anybody could have created a better film to complete everything, cap off the trilogy, cap off all 9 films, an endpoint, at least for now, for the Skywalker story, and had it been better than The Rise of Skywalker. If you had gone the route of Rey being a complete unknown, hey, I didn't mean to do that, but I did. If you had gone the route of Rey being an unknown, a nobody, I can't help but wonder if there would have been a bit of a disconnect to the larger saga as a whole, wherein here you have this nobody that came in and ended up doing the final job that everybody that came before them couldn't do, in finally taking out Palpatine. Now, granted, this is because of the story that was written in the lead up to The Rise of Skywalker. So this is the hand that was dealt. This was the story, they had to complete it. And so you did have this character, didn't know what background she came from. They decided to bring Palpatine back, right? And in doing so, made her related to Palpatine. If you had her being a nobody, I think it would have been a bit of a cheat, wherein all of these other individuals that had this connection throughout the saga to this ultimate evil that everybody's been battling that hasn't been fully defeated, and yet they were defeated by some random individual, essentially. We would have been familiar with them by then, but in terms of the storyline and the timeline of the entire Star Wars saga, going back to the Phantom Menace, I don't think that works. Now, if you go the route of not bringing Palpatine back, and this is just a fight between Rey and Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, redemption, that kind of thing, then, maybe you have a different story and a compelling story. But be that as it may, rounding out the whole saga and grounding Rey within the saga itself via the bloodline of Palpatine, and then ultimately her not giving in to Palpatine and his final drive at galactic domination, and therefore, with all of the Jedi behind her taking him out, absolutely works for me. And I find that incredibly, incredibly compelling. And I've made the argument before, and I'll just, since we're here, in relation to Ben's death, he committed a lot of atrocities. So you get a redemption. Reylo has its moment. But ultimately, Ben's got to accept the results of his consequences. And, therefore transform into the Force in a positive way. Essentially go to a galaxy far, far away Star Wars version of heaven. Rather than, going into the Star Wars version of hell and the dark side. For me, it absolutely works. So, again, that being said, though, I completely understand where Disney Desi is coming from. And more people, I think, agree with her than they do with me. But I also it took me a long time to get to that point. The Rise of Skywalker is just a film that I find incredibly entertaining and rewatchable. More rewatchable than The Last Jedi, but again, also a film that I absolutely love. So, what was supposed to be a micro episode ended up being almost a regular length episode. So, thank you for that, Disney Desi, for allowing me the opportunity to expand upon my thoughts once again of a movie that I absolutely love. I appreciate it. And I'm still in the middle of a rewatch of the sequel trilogy. So, wrapped up watching The Phantom Menace, The Force Awakens recently, and I've got The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker in my Blu-ray wallet. I've been on a bit of a sci-fi kick relating to traversing space stories because of my hype for Project Hail Mary. So I recently did a rewatch of Sunshine. I actually have The Martian queued up. May do Ad Astra. I own that on Blu-ray. I enjoy that movie quite a bit. Didn't care for it as much on the first watch, but on the second watch, I enjoyed it much, much more. And in terms of deep space travel movies, that one is definitely a good one. So, as always, thank you so much for checking out the episode. I hope you will follow the show on YouTube. Or, if you're listening to this on the podcast, I hope you follow the podcast, never miss an episode. And because you like science fiction, check out my science fiction series, EMBARK. Written for adults, completely age-appropriate for those 11 and older. EMBARK Book 1 today in ebook, available at a discount. Also available for free, Kindle Unlimited, paperback, hardcover, and audiobook. For Book 1, this is the description. Taft has found something, and humanity won't survive without it. With interstellar travel possible, ship mechanic Taft Guardia prepared to one day travel the galaxy. But when an industrial accident inside a D-Corp civilian and military spacecraft factory sets off an apocalyptic chain of events, exploring the stars becomes a matter of survival. As a global evacuation begins, the ruthless leader of D-Corp threatens every vessel not loyal to his regime. Meanwhile, fellow pilot Keitha Morrow suddenly receives a cryptic message from her father, an aerospace engineer who died 1 year earlier. When Taft and Keitha discover what may be the key to saving Earth's evacuees, they become unwittingly tied to the catastrophe and must solve the mystery of her father's past before it's too late. Again, if you like science fiction, and I know you do or you wouldn't be listening to this podcast, EMBARK is filled with some romance, a lot of action, unique action sequences, amazing technology. It's all perfect for you. Head on over to Amazon.com and pick up EMBARK Book 1 today. Search for EMBARK, Jon Justice, and you'll find it there on Amazon. Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode. As always, email me. Look forward to hearing from you. And wherever you are, I hope you're happy, I hope you're healthy, and I hope you're safe. I'll talk to you guys again next week. Bye.
The Force will be with you. Always.
My nerd world.